All right, so we should be live, and just give me a moment to make sure I see the stream, put it on mute, and we will get started. Perfect. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. As you know, we have been facing extreme censorship alongside many other truth seekers out there. If you want to support this show, please go to mattbelair.com and become a member. You can share or leave a review to get the word out there. And most importantly, consider doing 3 kind acts wherever you are in the world today. Today, we have 2 incredible guests for you. Our first guest, Lynn Miller, holds dual degrees in psychology and biology. She has also done extensive research in the field of consciousness and out-of-body experience. Our second guest, Barbara Mango, holds a PhD in metaphysics. She is a board member of the Past Life Institute and served on the committee for the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation. With decades of experience between them, they have co-authored the book Convergence, the Interconnection of Extraordinary Experiences. Welcome to the show, Lynn Miller and Barbara Mango.
Thank you. Excited to be here today.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you both. I love going over your bios. They're very extensive. Both of you, you guys have been researching intensely fields that I'm very curious about: out-of-body experiences, consciousness, the limits of consciousness. I think I saw one of you was even with Edgar Casey, or did I mistake that for Edgar Mitchell? I don't know. I maybe just made my brain go to Edgar Casey, but maybe you guys can just introduce yourself a little bit.
I wish it was Edgar Casey.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. That's immediately when I saw Edgar, I
wish it was.
Yeah. Cool. Well, why don't we?
I love the Sleeping Prophet.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, let's start with you, Lynn. Why don't you just share a little bit about your background and your research and how you came to co-author the book with Barbara?
Okay. Well, it's I started, I guess, my journey in spirituality around 2006, and where I just happened to watch a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? And even though I've always been interested in the paranormal and UFOs and just all kinds of really neat stuff, that's kind of where it all started with me as I started to getting into more into the meditation and started studying more about consciousness and quantum theory and things like that. As I started to meditate more, I started to having more of these strange experiences. Now, I would say that most of my life, I've had spontaneous out-of-body experiences. And they were always, to me, because I have, I'm a biologist also, I have a science background, and I just would not accept things like that. It's like, well, that's just too woo-woo for me. And, but as you get more into the meditating and quieting the mind, I just noticed that they started to happen quite often, especially the vibrational state, where it felt like a freight train was going into my head. And I just started to really questioning it and diving into it. Started listening to more podcasts, reading more books. And then I happened to find a podcast with William Buhlman. And he was talking about everything that I had experienced. That was around 2010. And after that, it was that's when my whole world just totally flipped. I've had already had some amazing paradigm changes, but when I realized that I was having out-of-body experiences, that really, really changed a lot. So I started, that's when I started to investigate how to have OBEs, and my journey began having the controlled out-of-body experiences. And that's been an incredible journey. It was about 3 years ago that I stumbled upon the Dr. Edgar Mitchell in research of extraterrestrials. That's the other Edgar. And where we were looking at these different types of modalities, including out-of-body. And of course, and a lot of people who have out-of-body experiences, they may experience what they believe to be possibly extraterrestrials. There's all kinds of non-human intelligences that you can come across. So that was started to come into that. And then that's when I was introduced to Barbara. So we started to actually research this together and started to write a chapter for the book Beyond UFOs. And that's how it started. And that was about 3 years ago. And then we decided to write our own book. And Barbara, what about you?
Well, my journey started when I was 2 years old. That's when I had my first experience. I've had experiences across the board. I mean, you name it. When I was 2 years old, I assume it was a spirit guide. It could have been a non-human intelligent being, but she appeared to me as a very tall, elegant, beautiful Native American woman, very wise. She would have come into my bedroom when I was playing alone, and we've had these deep, deep, deep discussions. And the thing was that I didn't think they were weird. I totally understood what she was saying completely. We would have telepathic communications about the cosmos, about the meaning of the universe, the Big Bang, while we were here. And you know, looking back, it was so strange. She would speak to me telepathically. That was normal. I understood everything she said, and she showed me unconditional love, which I did not get in my home life. So that started my journey. And throughout my life, I've just had a myriad and variety of what you would call spiritual, paranormal, extraordinary, inexplicable experiences. So that actually became my norm and the way I viewed life. And it was very difficult for me because growing up, I lived in the Midwest. I was raised as a liberal Jew. So we were the only Jewish family, I don't even know, in the county. I mean, it seemed like that. And so I felt like I had three things that actually added to my sense of being an outsider, and one of them that I was Jewish in the middle of the Bible Belt, and unfortunately I experienced a lot of, you know, prejudice and misunderstanding. I also was raised in a very difficult, abusive home, and I was an experiencer, and so I felt so alone. I mean, I wasn't accepted culturally or religiously. I wasn't, you know, I didn't really feel like it belonged in my family. And here I am, this little weird kid that has these experiences and talks telepathically about the origins of the universe, you know? So it was really weird and hard for me, and I didn't know what to do with it. So as I grew and got older, I majored in art, and then I did probably 10 other jobs. And I was working in education with small children in a Head Start program. And I was climbing up a gym-like structure to try to rescue a little child that was falling off. And I slipped and I fell and I broke my back. And I could no longer teach. I really couldn't do anything. You know, I was just trying to heal. So I had a decision to make. I had to decide, okay, what can I do with my life? I can't be physical anymore. I don't want to have a pity party for myself. So how can I go inward? And what do I want to do? And who am I? And then I thought, you know, I am who I've been my whole life. I'm really this person that somehow is able to transcend space-time as we know it and connect with other dimensions. Wow. Is there a way I can study this? Is there a way I can pursue this? So I started looking into it, and it spent several months, and I ended up finding a really fascinating program in metaphysics at a theology college. And of course, I looked really hard, and I was checking the Better Business Bureau because I didn't want to go to, like, you know, a woohoo school. I wanted to make sure it was totally accredited and you know, the real deal. It was a great school, a great program. I loved it. I got my master's degree, and quite honestly, I just loved my classes so much. I kept going and going and going until I got my PhD. And from then on, I've just been writing and researching. And as Lynn said, we were working together on a scientific foundation. We were on the research team, and we took our chapter and we said, you know what, let's expand this into a book. And that's what we did.
Holy smokes. Well, that's quite the intro. There's a lot of things that's going through my mind. It's interesting because you guys both have a scientific background. And so for people who listen to this podcast, most of them will be okay with what you're saying, but people who don't listen to the podcast would be like, holy smokes, this is a little bit unbelievable. And I'm reminded of having Dr. Nisha Manek on the podcast. And she talked about, she wrote a book, The Genius of William A. Taylor, and he was researching consciousness his whole life, talking about the power of the quantum field or out of body, or however you want to phrase that field that is beyond our five senses. And studying with the indigenous elders, I remember Carlos Barrios, who's a Mayan elder, telling me we actually naturally have 20 senses. And I thought that was very fascinating, because if you never had the sense of sight, you wouldn't know what sight is like. If you never had the sense of sound or hearing, you wouldn't know what that's like. And so I'm curious, like the limits of consciousness and what is truly going on here. And so you guys have an experiencer type of background, but also the scientific background. So what I'd like to ask is, what was the motivation for writing the book, and what do you find the most useful for a person on their journey who wants to connect to something more? Because I feel like the spiritual journey, or the out of body, or getting in touch with the quantum field or creator, whatever you want to phrase that, is a connection with something greater. And I feel like that's the pursuit. So maybe one of you guys want to jump in on that convoluted question.
It's not convoluted at all. Actually, Lynn and I's main, I think if you could say our main purpose or our main focus or our main intent, was the difficult journey that most experiencers have. Like I said, for me, I had to stifle myself. I had to go through this journey and have these inexplicable experiences and not be able to talk about them and keep them to myself. I wasn't in an environment or a place or surrounded by people that understood me. And to try to make sense of it and to try to incorporate it was so difficult. And I probably spent most of my life, I always viewed myself as weird, awkward, different, strange, but in a really negative way. And that's it's harmful, it's difficult. And so we wanted to reach out to readers and say, hey, you know what? This isn't everybody's norm, but this is our norm. We're no longer afraid to talk about it. We want you to feel comfortable to talk about it. We are compassionate. We understand. We've been there. We've done it. And we also want you to understand that there's a personality type prone to these experiences. And if you read our book, you may very well see yourself in there. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but these types of personalities with particular backgrounds tend to have experiences and basically come wired differently into the world, maybe with a higher vibration or just a really fine-tuned ability to flip into other dimensions more easily than more people. So we wanted the connection with people so they felt comfortable and they felt there's like-minded people out there. And then we took it from there. That was really, really important to us. And Lynn, what other things in the book do you think really touch people?
Hold on, Lynn, you're muted.
Okay. Especially with how we started the whole chapter, we were looking into the possibilities of also where we were studying the UAP related contact, which is contact with possibly extraterrestrials. So we were kind of looking at this in a different way, where you have to understand that, in the field of ufology, they're more interested in bright, shiny ships. and lights in the sky and things like that. But we feel that the most important thing are the experiencers themselves, because people who experience these strange things, whether they see entities, whether they're having out-of-body experiences, if they're seeing possibility of what they believe to be extraterrestrials or other types of non-human intelligent beings, that there's something that is extremely unique about the experiencer themselves. It's all about the experiencer. And that's where all the amazing and great information is about learning about the people who have had these experiences, and not about the experience actually, because that's the one thing that I started to delve into so much when I started to learn about myself, was that, you know, I was on forums and other forums and groups and listening to their stories, and I had learned so much about consciousness, about the 0 point field, about all the stuff that whatever you want to call it, through experiencers. I think that the experiencers have taught me more than anything, because, you know, whether or not you join certain types of belief systems, or you adopt certain types of belief systems, it's all within us. The journey, everything that we can learn, it's within us. And that's why I love to be able to concentrate on the experiencers themselves. And that's where we learn.
I love that. I find it fascinating, because most people who do go into ufology or metaphysics or things like that, they do focus on the shiny ships, which is interesting. But when you focus on the individual, their stories are very, very fascinating. I'm thinking of, I think it's Betty and Barney Hill. You know, that story about what happened to them is very famous and very fascinating. And even when I was training with the indigenous elders, they would talk about other intelligences, and that's how they phrase it. There are other intelligences here. And if we only perceive a very limited view of the sound spectrum, of the light spectrum, of all the spectrums, if we're very limited, we have no idea what's going on. And it could also be, you know, life in the oceans. I can't remember what movie that is, but it just talks about potential life in the oceans that we wouldn't be aware of. While there's more not land, but more space and volume in the oceans than there is in the land. So who knows what the heck's going on down there. But what I wanted to ask was, if we're exploring our consciousness and we're exploring reality, for me, when I've had these experiences, because I know what you guys are talking about, they were profound, but they're very helpful for the individual. It's like an individual awakening that you kind of want to pass on, but I found that I can't stay there. You know, I've described it as your mother's love times a million. You know, and there's a variety of different experiences, but it changes the way that you view this reality you're in. And the easiest way to experience that is lucid dreaming. That's how I first did it, when I was able to become aware in my dream. And I thought, well, that's weird. If I'm now conscious here in this place, what is going on in that place? So how many other places can I become conscious in? It's a very weird idea to entertain. And so when you guys are talking about potentially astral projection or going to another dimension, can you define that from a scientific background? Because like I said, you both have a very in-depth scientific background, which is great. You know, many of the people who have these experiences, they don't have that. So maybe you can help somebody who's new to this wrap their mind around what's actually happening.
I could try my best, and I'm not what you call a quantum physicist or anything. It's just that it's all about the fact that consciousness is non-local. It's not within our bodies or our brains. We are interdimensional beings. So basically, we are interdimensional beings who are, you know, sort of having some type of physical existence, if you want to call it a physical existence. So that's, you know, what we're doing is we're sort of creating this reality, but we're really interdimensional. And that's really what our book kind of focuses on, the fact that it's called Convergence, the interconnection, because all these types of experiences, like Barbara's background is in near-death studies. And all these, whether they are near death whether we're experiencing afterlife images, past life things, all of this has to do with non-local consciousness. So that's where it all ends up converging into that aspect. As of the science behind it, you know, there's a lot of things that you can look into, like the quantum hologram theory, certain things like how does DMT affect the brain in this way to be able to put us into this type of non-locality. But that's probably the best way that I can explain something like this, is that, you know, we're not physical beings anyway. You know, we're interdimensional, and our consciousness can explore that. As to where it goes, that is infinite. There are infinite possibilities of where we can travel in dreams, lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences. I usually kind of call it, you know, where you're kind of like Googling something, and when you Google something, you can like have all these thousands and thousands of things on Google, and it's kind of like that when you're traveling out of body. It's like, I want to go to this, like I want to go to Stonehenge, or I want to visit the moon or Mars, and that's still so infinite as to where you go, the time, because time does not exist. And it's really amazing to be able to experience where past, present, and future are one, and where you're no longer in linear time. So it's, I hope that I explained that okay.
Well, I was able to follow along.
Barbara, do you
I
have
thought it
any
was pretty
comments?
good. Yeah, Barbara, what do you think? And also, I'll just ask you to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hi. Well, how I came about this is every different type of experience that I had. And I mean, these range from communication with past loved ones, the typical paranormal type of phenomena. I've had like a transcendent experience where I merged with everything that is. I've had probably 25 spontaneous past life recalls while fully awake, mediumistic types of experiences where it's very clairsentient. If I'm at a certain place, I know exactly what happened at that place. But even though every experience was different, oh, and including a sighting, which was absolutely amazing when I was a child, of a craft, I've noticed there are parallels between all of them. And the reason why I call them interconnected is because they all happen outside of our 3D everyday space and time. They all have greatly heightened senses. I've received information downloads in many, many of them. I've either sensed a present or seen some type of otherworldly light. Time has been distorted. Communication is always telepathic. And a lot of them are multidimensional. I think when I'm experienced a past life recall, they're happen in probably, I think, like 5 dimensions. So they're so real. They're realer than real. And they're unforgettable. They're indelible. And in one, what I call the transcendent experience, when I felt like I was merging with everything there is, it was almost what near-death experiencers talk about, the light, going to the light, and the absolute indescribable love you feel. It really is impossible. It's impossible to put into human words, but it is. It's like the love you have for a child magnified by 10 billion. And it's so that's why my myriad of experiences, when you sort of sift through them, they have so many commonalities that to me, it always made sense that they're interconnected. And how can they be interconnected? Well, they're interconnected because consciousness really can go and be anywhere. There's no time, and past life is the past, right? I've had precognition, future. So that's always how I've seen you know, my vision. And I remember telling my husband, because I always think of myself as confined in my physical body. And sometimes I get very frustrated with that. And I remember I was having a conversation with my husband, and he doesn't, he gets it, but he doesn't get it. And I said to him, oh, I'm so tired of being in the constraints of this physical body. I just want to, leave it and go home. And he turned and looked at me, panicked, and he said, are you thinking of killing yourself? And he said, no, I just feel so confined, and it's really hard to explain. So that's how I view it. That's my lens.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. And, for me, I've had a few mind-blowing experiences in my life that don't make any sense. I have filmed several UFOs that I put on YouTube. I've had several experiences in my life where I saw something in physical reality that shouldn't have been there. And I've also been able to experience non-local mind, whatever. I don't know what that is, fifth dimension, something else. I don't know what it is. I have no idea what happens there, but it isn't this consciousness as we see it as day to day. And I like how you described it's more, I say it's more real than this reality. You said it's realer than real. And when I've had it through meditation or a couple other different experiences, that experience is more real than this one. So that is also a very confusing thing to experience. And so what I'd love to ask, because not everybody's had these things, and I feel like some people want these things like meditation to go get something, right? I want to go out of body to get this, or I want to have this experience to get something, which I think you can. And I think the value in it is understanding that you're not just locked into this consciousness, that there is a sense of freedom in your spirit. And that's what it showed me, that I am connected to something greater, that there is a great spirit that I'm a part of. That's what it did for me personally. And it expanded my consciousness in a way that I was open to infinite possibilities of who I was and what I was capable of. So I found that to be valuable. And I'd love for you guys to share what are some practical takeaways or advice or anything you could share with somebody who's on that journey, because William Buhlman has been on the show. It's one of the most watched shows, and he teaches about astral projection. And, I remember reading a book on astral projection at 15 years old, and honestly, it could have been his book. I don't know. I just remember going in the basement and giving it a try. And a few years later, I had, a very profound experience, but it didn't happen right away. And I also realized I couldn't stay in that space. Although it was good to be there, unfortunately, I couldn't stay there for some reason. We're supposed to be here on this planet in this body doing something. And so I just give it back to you guys to share maybe some practical tools or tips or lessons that you guys have learned from researching out of body experiences, consciousness, other dimensions, and all this interesting world of what the limits of consciousness are.
First, I believe that when you seek too hard, I think it puts a little block. Lynn and I have worked with a lot of scientists and academics and researchers, and our experience was, this isn't across the board. Some of them have had experiences, usually they're limited, but most of them have not. And they work so hard, so furiously to prove what Lynn and I feel we already know experientially. And one in particular I was quite friendly with, and he would get so frustrated. He said, I want to have experience. How can I have experiences? And I said, you're so focused in your left brain. I know you want to, but you've got to sort of lose some of that left brain focus and that linear sequential thinking and that intense need to just research. So that's very difficult to let go of the concrete, sequential, linear, which I think gives us a sense of control. So what I always recommend is, I'm very experientially oriented. I read voraciously, and I've read on all of these modalities very, very, very extensively. I personally, though, think that one has to try and experiment with different practices. I've tried meditation. I've tried vibrational healing. I became a Reiki master because I was interested in energy work. And I found that as I studied, my energy level and ability, to work with energy and feel energy and heal with energy grew and grew and grew. And I tried many, many, many different techniques, and some just seemed to feel right for me. Some just stuck. So I think if you really are interested in experiencing, you've got to find what works for you, because it's not just a one fits all. And I would say go for it, whatever you are interested or think you're interested in, and don't give up. If you try, Kundalini yoga and it's just not working for you, okay, what can we try next? It takes a very open mind. It takes a mind that's willing to say, okay, I've got to find something to ground me and quiet me. And it actually takes, a lot of curiosity. So I'm more go experiential. Yes, read, but go experiential. And Lynn, how do you look at it?
Oh, okay. Well, the way I look at it is, it's like, what do these experiences mean? And the big picture. For instance, it's like, of course, I would say I'm under the school of William Buhlman. He is my mentor. He's my, I feel like he's like the grand poobah of these things. And it's like what we are experiencing as this, because first of all, I know it's a knowing. I know what my experiences mean. I know that there is something beyond this physical body, that we are more than this physical body. I look up at the sky at night. I have looked up at the stars every time I go outside, and the beauty and how amazing it is. And it's like, I can travel the stars, within our consciousness. We could do that. We can do anything. We can go anywhere. I mean, it's just almost as if it's like, we take this physical existence a little bit too seriously sometimes. And I think that these experiences have taught me that there's so much more. And as you start to understand these, and as you have these dreams and the lucid dreams and stuff, you start to also be able to work this life out even more, because of course we are here for a reason. We're here to learn. We're here to go through these hardships, these bumps and all this. And one thing that I have learned is that these experiences have helped me help me face my fears, because that's one thing that dreams and out-of-body experiences do. And then that's one thing that you'll face a lot. I mean, it's all beautiful. It's been wonderful, but it's also a means of being able to get through, blocks in life. So, they are very intertwined, and it helps you realize how to better get on with this type of life in your existence and your daily lives, how you can better get along with, with the rest of humanity and all those things. It especially teaches you that you're one with nature, and that nature is one of the most precious and most beautiful things. Because of any place that I have gone the most was in nature. The beauty of the oceans and the skies and the trees. I've been inside trees, and I've been under the water, and I've been so one with that. And it really teaches you that we cannot, a lot of experiencers have that in common, where they feel the unity and oneness with the surrounding world, with the animals and plants. It just teaches you so much that, this is something that we just can't turn our backs on, and we become more in tune to, just not what's on the other side, or, not what we view in non-locality, but what we also view in our reality and what we choose to be as our physical reality. I hope I just didn't rattle on, and I hope you can understand that.
Yeah, I loved all that. And I especially love the nature bit because I'm reminded of Jesus and the Essenes. I read this book a long time ago, and it said there's 4 ways to know God. I invite people to look that up, but I believe one was study, one of them was nature, one of them was self-inquiry or meditation, basically. And I think the other one was a master. I'm sure about the first 3. And I think the last one was like a mentor or a tutor that would help you there. And so, when we go into the inner world, I think it's one of the most important things we can do, and we're not trained on how to do that. So what if every single kid in the world was trained to go within their own minds and their own hearts and learn how to create stillness and connect to everything that is, and it's within them. The Bible says the kingdom of heaven is within you. All the spiritual teachings tell you to go within. And so then what would be possible? And I've also heard that the Essenes were a group of masters that knew Jesus was coming. So that's an interesting idea of, like, even today, I wonder what exists in this world of groups of people who train children from birth, on these spiritual principles, on these inner principles, and teaching them how to eat right, and don't let them get all frigged up with TV and all the stuff that's distracting in our Western and our developed countries, and give that focus. Like, I think it's the Kogi tribe. I think that's what it is. And I think they don't see light for like 12 years or something like that. I know people in the comments and out there will know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's such a fascinating group of people. And I have a friend actually training with them, and hopefully we're going to get one of them on the show. And so what would they view reality like? What would be normal to them? Right? When I was studying with the indigenous elders, their normal is not my normal. It wasn't any of my friends' normal. It wasn't the normal of anyone else I knew. It was something totally different. So what is actually going on here? And I always try to bring it back to how practical we can make it. And so for somebody who's exploring these things, I'll try to phrase it in a little bit of a different way, but what can we do as a daily practice, or even a daily philosophy, to integrate into our own life, to have a deeper connection with all that is, or to begin to explore our inner worlds and our outer worlds? And I'll leave that. I guess I'll go back to Barbara to go first. And you'll have to unmute too.
Can you hear me now?
You're in the game.
Hello?
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 Yeah, go ahead. Well, she was there, then she drops out. We could hear you. You just got to unmute yourself again. She's had a little bit of a technical issues today, so if you didn't see her, I guess I'll go to Lynn. I'll try to unmute Barbara in the meantime. Now, Lynn, you're muted.
Okay. So you ask, what can we do to change this? I just know that through these experiences, I feel like the one thing that has been taught to me the most, because, I've seen, I have spirit guides and different people on the other side, my teachers, my family, and I felt like the one thing that they have tried to teach me the most was to try to understand try to understand each other more, try to understand humanity more, because it's so easy when you're kind of like this, where you feel like you just don't fit into the rest of society, and you have this tendency to want to separate yourself from it. Because sometimes I really wish that I sort of did that and lived out in the middle of nowhere and didn't have any whatsoever contact with anybody, but that's not right. We're here to try to understand each other. And to me, that's part of this, is to try to understand that, each and every one of us are having our own difficulties. We have our own journeys, and we all are having our own difficulties. So regardless of what you see and the type of people that you may find difficult. It's just that we're all having to face our battles within ourselves, and we're all facing the same battles. And to be able to be compassionate about that, about each other, and to have more, forgiveness and compassion and understanding that even though we're different, we're all fighting the same thing. And that's the one thing that I feel like my guides have tried to teach me the most, was to have this compassion for each other. No boundaries, despite, anything. And, in today's society, in today's world, it's so hard because, we're kind of experiencing this duality of opposites, and we can get so easily entangled into that. And it's just step away from that, and just, look at the fact that we are one, we are connected through this interdimensional consciousness, through this 0-point field. We are all connected to each other. And that's the greatest thing I think I've gotten out of this. I think Barbara's unmuted now.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Hey, Barb.
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
You can hear me. Okay. What I've learned from all of my experiences too, are there's 3 things that I feel we're supposed to bring forward. And one is compassion. The other is that everything in this world is based on love. We are love. We're light and we're love. And knowledge, ever seeking knowledge. And I don't necessarily mean it doesn't have to be intellectual school knowledge, just knowledge. And I think to take all 3 and be able to put them together, it also requires quiet time, reflective time. I've personally found helpful, and I can connect with my higher consciousness or with my guides through journaling. I think that's another good practice for people that might not have been able to get to the point they want to get to in their spiritual journey. I found journaling and just free thought and flow when I journal. Nature, like Lynn said, is so inspirational to me. But I think too, if you just practice compassion, and kindness, it opens you up. It not only opens up your perspective, it helps you understand that everything on this earth and every person on this earth is connected. We're all interconnected. And I know that's a difficult concept, probably in theory, but in practice, it's not. And the other thing I want to say is, and probably because of the way I was raised, sometimes when we are a little different, or our interests or the way we think is a little unique, we have to make our own families. We can create our own families of like-minded people. And as Lynn always says, develop our own tribe. And I think that is incredibly helpful and important for people looking for this. And fortunately, with social media and the internet, it's very easy to do that. I have made amazing friends. I have made friends where the connection is so deep, they have become my family. And by utilizing that as well, it helps you open, it helps for a free dialogue. I just think it's a wonderful tool. Social media can be a turnoff in some ways, but in others, when you're seeking, I think it's really important and extremely helpful.
Well, I love both your answers, and I really love the kindness and compassion piece. When I was in Nepal meditating with the monks, and I was doing lessons with older monks that were there, and I would always ask them all these different questions, and they would always come back to kindness and compassion. And that's like their number one teaching, was to be kind and compassionate, and then also understanding humanity, trying to have compassion for other people, even when they are combative, even when they are harmful. And that seems to be what's going on here. I was actually on a call today, and a lot of people in certain parts of the world is a very divided place. And if you have a difference of opinion, you might get severely attacked for that. And so it's interesting having compassion for abuser, but also being able to hold your point of view, and there's only one point of view out there. Well, there fractions of it, but it's like, if you don't believe what I believe, I'm going to attack you. I was like, whoa, that's a crazy thing. Like, please don't do that. And so, I know a lot of us are being challenged in the world today. So what I'd love to ask is, can you give any practical tools for a process people could go through to have, maybe it's one of the out of body experiences or lucid dreaming, or to be able to touch this viscerally? And so many people are so unfamiliar with this. One of the ways that I like to do it is through breath work. The other way that I like to, actually more meditation. I more like to put people into a guided state, and especially going through mastering the quantum heart hypnosis, where for me, I've done a lot of guided meditations for people and hypnosis for people, past life regression, death rituals, things like that. That's very profound for a lot of people because they haven't even mastered quieting their mind. So when you bring them into a very powerful experience, but when you add the heart into it, that's what I found to be like a little bit of a key that's very different, because you're asking this intelligent, that's almost the closest thing connected to your soul, to give you feedback. Because we're usually giving and wanting feedback from our minds, but our mind is very limited. It can't give us the same feedback our heart can or our soul can. And so exploring in that way, I can give them a little grasp of a bigger picture, of a connection with spirit, of a different understanding. And then you can go as far as astral projection, walking in your dreams, having these entities at night. And I've heard countless stories of this. And like you guys said, you had these experiences when you were younger. I know that when I travel, and people will start to open up about their experiences, pretty well 100% of people have had some sort of out-of-body experience, a near-death experience, or an ET entity, other being experience, whether they were children or they were older. It's funny because you see the people on the outskirts and they're like, they'll say, I've never told this story to anyone, because it breaks their reality. They can't put it into any box of anything they've ever experienced before. And so for me, it says, look, our life is infinite. We don't just die. There are other forces here that we're unaware of, and we get to consciously choose what we want to engage in. Do we want to engage in the path of spirituality, of righteousness, of truth, of creator God spirit, or do we want to go down the path through our own free will of kind of deceit and, taking from people? And I feel like this reality must come with a confusion factor. We can't have 100% certainty, because we wouldn't then have free will to make the choices that we're going to make. It has to come back to free will. So with that rant, I'll go to Lynn for her insights and updates. Unless Barbara, you want to chime in, but either of you feel free to.
No, I'll let Lynn.
Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
Okay. Yeah. Despite the fact that, throughout my life, I was having spontaneous out-of-body experiences. And, when I was younger, I pretty much thought, okay, well, I guess everybody had those. And, they were just something common to me. But yes, there are definitely things that you can do to pretty much improve your chances of having things like this. Now, the thing about it is, when I started doing meditation, now I am not this big transcendental meditation type of person. I've always had I had the difficulty of quietening the mind and certain things like that. So, how I started was listening to binaural beats, meditation music, guided meditations. And that's kind of what I had started getting into, to be able to start being more spiritual, because that's what my path was. I was wanting to become more spiritual, in that I wasn't really understanding what was going on with out-of-body experiences at that time. But because I was having more of these quiet moments where I was quieting my mind and doing things like that, I started to have them more. And then that's when I started, okay, I'm having an out-of-body experience. How do I learn how to do that even more? And that's where I learned how you can actually have controlled out-of-body experiences. And really what you do is, there's really no one that could just lay down and say, I'm going to have an out-of-body experience and have one. But there are things that you can do to improve your chances. And a lot of that is the fact too that, when you're having an out-of-body experience, you're entering into the hypnagogic state. So you're hitting into the theta brainwave. And that's kind of where you want to enter into it. And you want to be able to maintain that. So, listening to a lot of about what William Buhlman suggested and things like that, there are different ways of being able to, it's what we call the wake back to bed technique, where you might get up maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, stay awake for a little bit, lay back down, maybe go through your binaural beats or whatever meditation that you like, try to clear the mind. And during that time, you will prolong your hypnagogic state, at which you will and might enter into the vibration state. And then once you're into the vibration state, then you can have an OBE. A lot of people might have experienced sleep paralysis. That's a huge indication that you're having an out-of-body experience by sleep paralysis, which a lot of people do experience that when they feel like they are trying to wake up and they can't move. That's basically your body telling you relax, and you're just about ready to leave your body, because pretty much everybody will enter sleep paralysis. But yeah, another thing that I do that seems to work even better at nighttime is that I may get up extra early in the morning, stay up a little bit, and maybe take like a mid-morning nap and do it that way. Meditation, other things, but it's almost as if your body is just ready to just hit it really easily, the hypnagogic state. And that's when you can that's what increases your chances of having an out-of-body experience. So, I'm not saying that you just can't lay there and just say, I'm going to go out of body. A lot of people, I don't even think William Buhlman can do that. It's just there are things that you can do to increase your chances. And definitely meditation is one of them, because you need to practice being able to shut down your monkey brain, all those thoughts and everything. You need to be able to concentrate on something different. That's why I like the guided meditations, because they completely just kind of shut down everything that you're thinking or, and stuff. So that's one of my suggestions that I would say for people who are interested in having out-of-body experiences.
Thank you. I love all that. I'll get Barbara to chime in a moment as she unmutes herself. I'll give her that time to figure it out as I rant. But, it's interesting that you share all those, because it's the same thing that I've experienced when I was doing lucid dreaming, doing a guided meditation at night, but also understanding that your brain is more active at like 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, something like that. And you're more likely to be able to experience these things. So when I went to a Dr. Joe Dispenza workshop, we were working on some of that kind of stuff, and we had to get up at 4 in the morning. Then we would go through a very intense meditation, a very intense breath practice. And so also I had Jennifer Dumper on the podcast, I think over 2 years ago now, and she wrote a book called Liminal Dreaming, and also talked about certain foods that you could eat that would kind of help that out, and herbs. And I know that this has been used in indigenous cultures for years to have sometimes psychedelic experiences, but sometimes even just to help promote the dream state, in the same way you would eat a certain meal before having an athletic event. You can have herbs that would support either relaxing the mind and changing the brain waves. And that's the key, is that if we're talking about consciousness in the fifth dimension and things like that, most people are stuck in the beta brainwave, just a waking state. They're just going around in their beta brainwaves all day. And they think, this is what my brain is, and this is what it does. They don't know how to drop it down to either alpha or theta. And I think, and I make sure beta is the waking one, right? And then alpha is like kind of relaxed, you're daydreaming, right? And then theta, you're starting to get deeper into a deeper meditation. And as those those parts of the mind start to shut down, then you access something else, right? The non-local mind, right? But you have to get
Right.
out of the way. Your it's such a challenging thing because your consciousness is not allowed to come. And that's like, it's a whole other thing that engages. You can't kind of consciously walk there. It's almost more of a surrender. And so many people have a challenge with that. So I just wanted to kind of share those few things because I feel like it was, you know, fantastic advice. And Barbara, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I have a different experience than Lynn as far as actually studying, you know, over a long period of time. The thing with me, and this is what's been amazing, but at the same time really confusing for me, is that my experiences just pop out of nowhere, and they almost universally occur while I'm in a fully conscious state. I'll just be like, for example, this one I called a transcendent experience. I was taking a walk down my street. I love nature. You know, I love to look up at the sky and watch the clouds. And, you know, as a little kid, I'd look at the cloud. Oh, that one looks like a dog. That one looks like, you know, a horse. And so I have really no control over them. And I know this is probably not the norm. But here's an example. I was walking down the street, just looking at the sky. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, time stopped. It just stopped. I had no sense of time whatsoever. I knew I was rooted here in the three-dimensional world. I felt my feet on the road. I could feel the breeze in the air. I knew I was Barbara, but yet the sky seemed to fill with a intense, bright light. And I was overcome with such intense is just so weak of a word. I mean, mind-blowing love. Mind-blowing love. And I started getting downloads of information. I don't know. I felt as if I was communicating with God or source or whatever term that you would choose. And I was just being shown these connected threads. They almost looked like the threads of a spider web, you know, but they were glistening. And I was being shown that every single thing in this world is interconnected. I would see a little, you know, like a fine little wispy connective thread between me and a bug, and between me and a star. And it was coming at me at warp speed. I was surrounded by love and this bright, beautiful light, and seeing the interconnection of everything. And I was blown away. I had this deep, 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 deep understanding of all that is. And it just stopped. It just stopped. So I hadn't been practicing anything. I hadn't been intending anything to happen. And I remember I stopped. I was in the middle of the street and my neighbor happened to be outside. It was a nice summer day. And I had tears running down my face, because when you experience that type of love and oneness, it's almost too much for our three-dimensional bodies and senses to handle. It's just too great. So I remember I had tears streaming down my face and my mouth was wide open because I must have been gasping. And my neighbor just looked at me like, holy crap, this woman, this crazy woman lives down my street. I don't want to talk to her anymore. But what I'm saying is, and I think the reason why I'm able to have these sort of spontaneous experiences that have taught me and have been my teacher, is because I come from a home life that was very traumatic and abusive, and perhaps many of you as well have. And one of the ways, psychological coping mechanisms, is dissociation. And I mean mild dissociation. I don't mean pathological dissociation, you know, but just the ability to tune out, to just sort of zone out, to, you know, get into sort of a dream world, you know, like daydreaming. And I think because I can do that so easily, I can almost self-hypnotize myself, that if I'm relaxed and I'm walking, or unfortunately sometimes driving, I shouldn't say that because no one will want to drive with me, but I just my mind goes, and then I have my experiences. So I would say to a lot of you, anybody that has that ability to, quote, space out or daydream, if you can kind of just let that happen. And I don't mean while you're driving like me, but let that happen. Go with it. Don't think it's crazy. Don't sit there and go, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? Just sit in it. Let it happen. Relax with it. And that's how I find that my experiences come to me, through that. So it's a little unusual, you know.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's true. Some people just have those experiences, you know, like anything else. Some people just go through that more often or more naturally for whatever reason it is. You know, my partner actually, when she was younger, she had like 5 imaginary friends, and I think it was until like 3 or something. I'm like, I wonder if they were. I always consider, I'm like, I wonder if they are actually beings. Like, who knows? Who knows the perception of a child, you know, that's fresh out from the other side, and has no programming whatsoever. Who knows what they're seeing, if it's real or if they're making it up. And so I do know for sure people have spontaneous ones, probably just not as often as you do. And so, you know, that's definitely a rare thing, but it does exist. And other people train for it and they're able to have it. And then some of them happen spontaneously. From my interviews and talking to a lot of different people, sometimes it's just the universe kind of charging you up and giving you what you need. And other times it's a conscious direction where you're asking for help and you're wanting to connect with spirit. And then the universe again will respond, possibly with one of these experiences, letting you know that, hey, we're here. You're not alone. You're connected to something greater. And so if people want to spark that, it's that inner desire, it's that inner will first to say, okay, you know, I'm ready for this experience. I'm ready to have some guidance or some connection, and that can also be a spark. And I'm reminded also of Einstein, who would just use this on a micro scale, and I think other people did it as well. But if there was a problem that they couldn't solve, he would just hold a rock or something in his hand, and as they drift off to sleep, the rock would drop, and then he would be caught in between these two worlds. And so it would be opening up to that imagination space, into this other brainwave, into this other world, and then bring it back to this reality. Because like you guys have said, the challenge is when you're on that other side and you go through this experience, it's like, oh, this is the whole universe. And yeah, here's your, you know, mother's love times a billion. And it's all great. You understand everything now. And you're like, uh-huh. And then you go back and then you remember nothing. And you're like, come on, like, let me take one thing back. But over time you kind of process and you unfold it, and you do bring it back, but it isn't like English or like a graph that you understand. It's more like a feeling that you have to sort of unravel. I kind of say it's like, it's worse than like trying to understand a foreign language that you don't know. It's so you have no context for what it is. It's something totally different. So, you know, this guy's has been amazing. I'm really looking forward to checking out the book and the work, and how this might inspire other people to expand their consciousness in the way they view the world and the way they view themselves, and empower them to bring more compassion and kindness into their lives and connect to something greater than themselves. And I think that's what the journey of consciousness expansion is the journey of becoming the best version of yourself, but also understanding that you are interconnected to everyone, everything, and a force that is beyond imagination. And so I'd love to give it back to you guys to share any final words or thoughts. I guess Barbara, go first because you're already unmuted.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm having technical issues today. I just believe that, okay, I'll bring it back to when I was a child. I was raised as a very liberal Jew in the middle of the Bible Belt. And I was never religious because I grew up with these experiences that showed me that, you know, there aren't walls, there aren't differences. Everybody's interconnected. Everything is interconnected. So the whole dogmatic religion thing just never sat right for me. And even though we were raised in a, you know, low-key liberal Jewish home, I never, the Jewish you like tag never felt, you know, it never fit. It never felt right. And I would always say, I'm not Jewish, I'm spiritual. But what I took away from that is the one thing that I really connected with was doing mitzvahs. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, in the Jewish religion, that is probably the most important thing you're taught. Doing a mitzvah means you just do something kind for, it could be a person, an animal. It's just basically a random act of kindness that you do without wanting or expecting anything in return, just because that's compassion. And that's probably what I bring forth, not only from that teaching, but from every experience in my life. Because I think when you're coming from a place of compassion and kindness, it ties in with every single thing we've been talking about. I mean, it's part and parcel. We're all interconnected. How great would this world be if we realized that? How great would this world be if we all could get past our sort of, layers of protection and buffers and sometimes one-dimensional thinking and our judgment, and break through those barriers. And when you see life through a different lens and you realize that consciousness is everywhere, anywhere, it's not localized to the brain is just a filter, and we can all connect. Because of that, we can all connect to different dimensions where compassion and kindness and love, it exists, always exists there. So that's what I would say. And that's kind of my mantra in life, to just develop. And it's a process. It's not easy. Trust me, I have to work on it every day. But kindness and compassion and love and understanding, and also to be as non-judgmental as you can.
I love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I agree. It's everything that I've learned from studying with the monks and my indigenous elders as well. And, it always comes back to that. It's not complicated. It's just challenging. And I remember going through the Zen lessons, and they would talk about these universal principles and say the same thing as like these universal principles. There are not many. They're just an ever expansion of a deepening of understanding, here's another way I can be non-judgmental. Here's another way I can show and be compassionate. And I love the mitzvah thing because, David Lombard taught me the 3 kind acts a day, go out of your way to do it and don't tell anyone. Well, that takes you from heavenly minded to earthly good, rather than being so heavenly minded and forgetting to apply that in your daily interactions as you go about your business. So I love all that and appreciate it. And I'll go to Lynn to get her final thoughts.
Flies bothering me. Okay. What can I say? It's like the kingdom of heaven is within you. I mean, and I can't stress that enough, because it's like everything and all the truth and everything is within you when you look inside of you. And that's why it's like I often say, I have no belief systems. I follow no organized religion, because everything that you need to know is within inside of you. All the truths are, you just have to, look inside. And that's almost a cliche, but it's so true. The experiences that I have has shown me that we are more than our physical bodies. The experiences I have had, I have seen alternate realities. I have seen my mother, who passed away almost 2 years ago. I've seen her in her reality, in her realities that she is living. I know that life continues. You just know that. And I'm so positive about that. And no one needs to tell me that it is through a book or through anything, because I know that life continues and our consciousness continues on beyond these physical bodies. And it's wonderful. It truly is, just to know that. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I really appreciated you coming here and sharing your book and your wisdom. Where can people find you if they want to start to explore this and some of the resources? Because, you guys kind of talked William Buhlman's work, and so, you guys have the scientific background. So I know you have a ton of resources for the analytical minds who want to explore this, and also the spiritual seekers out there. So if they want to find your work and explore the book, where should they go?
We have our book, for sale on Amazon. It's available in a paperback, and it's also available on Kindle. It's for sale on Barnes and Noble in both, again, a paperback, and on Book Nook, also the book depository. As far as, yes, we have tons and tons of resources in the back of the book, because we feel it's really important for people not only to be able to, to search for answers, but also there's also some testing, some personality testing, and links to that to see if you may have the anomalous type personality. They're fun and they're interesting, but there's some wonderful foundations. And from my experiences, I've had a lot of past life experiences, and excuse me, and I studied near death. So I would say, and this is also listed, but the world's largest near-death experience foundation, and it's translated into, I think, about 35 languages, it's called NDERF, the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. They do research. You can be a research participant. It's just a plethora of information. It's run by Jeffrey and Jody Long. They also have a separate website for after-death communication. They also have a separate website for out-of-body experiences and research. There's just so much. And Lynn, what would you suggest for the out-of-body research?
Well, of course, William Buhlman, astroinfo.org. But another thing that we want to also tell our guests is that, we also have a website. Now, Barbara is a prolific writer, and she is an amazing writer, and she has written some of the most amazing blog articles that she puts out about twice a week. And it goes along with the things that we also wrote about in the book. So, our website is extraordinaryexperiences.org. And that's where you'll find lots and lots of amazing articles and stuff that goes along with the book. And then we also have, media sources there and other places that you can look up in websites, other resources that's also along that we have at our website. But yeah, definitely our website has lots and lots of great stuff too, because and Barbara she just puts those out there just like it's nothing. She's amazing. She's an amazing writer.
Thanks.
Well, thank you both for coming on the show. I have enjoyed this very much. I invite you guys to check out the book and dive deeper. And if you want to support the show, please share it, leave a review, because censorship is real and we appreciate you. But thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed this, and we'll see all you guys in the next episode.
Thank you so much. This is fun.
Awesome.
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Take care.
Thank you,
See
Matt.
later.
Bye.